The shuttle broke through the amber clouds and pressed her face against the small window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below her stretched endless golden savannas, broken only by towering cities of black stone that rose like teeth from the earth. This was and she was one of the first humans to ever set foot on it. "Stop gawking," Ambassador said from across the aisle. He did not look up from his tablet. "We're diplomats, not tourists." Pulled back from the window and folded her hands in her lap. "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." She was 24 years old, the youngest member of the diplomatic team, and the least important. She had been assigned to this mission because she spoke fluent, a language so difficult that most translation software struggled with it. She had learned it in university, spending 4 years mastering its growling tones and clicking consonants. When the posting came up and no one else volunteered, she raised her hand. Now she wondered if that had been a mistake. They were not friendly to humans. They were a warrior species, standing over 7 feet tall with gray skin covered in fine scales. Their eyes glowed with soft bioluminescence, and their hands ended in retractable claws that could slice through metal. For 10,000 years, they had conquered every species they encountered. They divided the galaxy into two categories, predators and prey. Humans, with their soft skin and blunt teeth, fell firmly into the second category. The shuttle landed in the capital city and followed Ambassador down the ramp. A delegation waited for them, their massive forms blocking out the orange sun. The leader stepped forward, his claws clicking against the stone ground. "I am Warlord," he said in the tongue. His voice was deep like rocks grinding together. "I welcome you to try not to get eaten." The behind him laughed, a harsh barking sound. Smiled his diplomatic smile and responded through his translator device. Stood silently behind him, invisible, forgettable. She had learned long ago that being overlooked was sometimes the safest place to be. They were escorted to the human embassy, a small building of white stone that looked fragile next to the massive structures around it. Was given a tiny room on the third floor with a window that looked out over a garden of strange purple plants. That first week passed in a blur of formal meetings and tense negotiations. The wanted access to human medical technology. The humans wanted mining rights to asteroids in space. Neither side trusted the other. Sat in the corner of every meeting taking notes that no one would read. She translated when the machines failed, which happened often. They barely looked at her. To them, she was not worth noticing. On the 8th night, there was a formal dinner in the Great Hall of Warlord. The room was enormous, lit by floating orbs of blue light. Warriors sat at long tables, tearing into raw meat with their claws and teeth. The human delegation sat at a smaller table near the back, eating carefully prepared food that would not make them sick. Sat at the end of the table, alone. Halfway through the meal, Warlord stood and raised his goblet. The hall fell silent. "I propose a toast," he said, "to our human guests. May they learn what it means to walk among true hunters." He turned his glowing eyes toward the human table. "Tell me, Ambassador, do your people have warriors, or do you only hide behind your machines and walls?" Cleared his throat. "We have soldiers, Warlord. Our military is quite capable." "Capable? Let the word hang in the air. I have seen your soldiers. They wear armor because their skin is weak. They carry guns because their claws are dull. They fight from far away because they are afraid to face death up close." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your kind survives only because you run fast and breed faster. You are prey pretending to be predators." The hall erupted in laughter. Stared at her plate. Her face burned, but she said nothing. Around her, the other human diplomats shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one argued. No one defended their species. What could they say? They were not entirely wrong. After the dinner, could not sleep. Her small room felt like a cage. She dressed in simple clothes and slipped out of the embassy, walking into the garden she had seen from her window. The night air was cool and smelled of strange flowers. 2 moons hung in the sky, casting silver light across the purple plants, sat on a stone bench and let out a long breath. She heard them before she saw them. Small footsteps quick and light, the rustle of leaves, a hushed voice saying, "Quiet, it will hear us." Turned and saw 3 shapes crouching behind a row of bushes. They were small, barely 4 feet tall, with the same gray skin and glowing eyes as the adult. But their features were softer, their claws still small and undeveloped. Cubs, children. They froze when they realized she had spotted them. For a long moment no one moved, looked at the cubs. The cubs looked at. The largest one, a female with bright amber eyes, seemed to be deciding whether to run or attack. Did something unexpected. She smiled and waved. "Hello," she said "are you playing a game?" The cubs exchanged glances. The largest one stepped forward, trying to look brave. "We were hunting," she said. "Practicing, you ruined it." "I am sorry," said. "I did not mean to ruin your hunt." The female cub tilted her head. "You speak our language." "I do." "Why do you not run? You are prey, we are predators." Considered this question. She looked at the 3 small faces watching her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. They had probably never been this close to a human before. "Should I run?" she asked. The cubs did not seem to know how to answer that. Stood slowly and the cubs tensed, ready to flee. But she only stretched her arms and looked up at the 2 moons. "It is late," she said. "Will your parents not worry?" "We are not afraid of the dark," the female cub said quickly. "We are hunters." "I see," smiled again. "Well, little hunters, perhaps I will see you again. Good night." She walked back toward the embassy, feeling their eyes on her back the entire way. At the door, she paused and looked over her shoulder. The cubs were still watching her, their glowing eyes bright in the darkness. Something had begun. The cubs came back the next night, and the night after that. At first, they only watched from the bushes, would sit on her stone bench, pretending to read or look at the stars, and she would hear them whispering to each other, arguing about whether to come closer, daring each other to speak to her. On the 4th night, the largest cub finally approached. She walked right up to and stood with her small arms crossed over her chest. "I am," she announced, "daughter of Warlord. You will tell me about humans." Closed her book. "Hello, I am. What would you like to know?" Had not expected this response. She had expected the human to be afraid, or at least nervous. Instead, the small creature just looked at her with calm, dark eyes. "Why are humans so weak?" demanded. "Are we weak?" "Yes, you have no claws, no fangs. Your skin tears easily. You cannot run fast or jump high. How did you survive?" "Thought about this. We helped each other," she said. "When one human was weak, another was strong. When one was tired, another kept watch. We survived together." Made a face. "That sounds like prey behavior." "Perhaps, but we are still here." The other 2 cubs crept closer, their curiosity winning over their caution. The smaller male had soft gray fur that had not yet shed, marking him as younger than the others. His eyes were a pale blue, and he moved carefully, as if expecting to be hit. "This is," said, pointing at him. "He is small and useless." Looked at the ground. "And this is," pointed at the 3rd cub, a female with quick movements and restless eyes. "She talks too much." "I do not," protested. Smiled at all 3 of them. "I am happy to meet you. Would you like to sit with me?" The cubs looked at each other. Sitting with prey was strange, but sitting with a strange creature from another world was also interesting. Curiosity won. They sat in a circle on the grass and began to talk. She told them about Earth, about blue oceans and green forests, about cities of glass and steel. She told them about snow and rain and thunderstorms. The cubs had never heard of weather that fell from the sky, and they did not believe her at first. "Water falls from the clouds?" asked. "Just falls on everyone. Yes, sometimes it falls as ice. We call it snow. That is ridiculous. Perhaps, but it is true. As the nights passed, taught them other things. She taught them games that human children played, hide and seek, which the cubs were very good at, word games which confused them. She taught them to make shadow puppets against the embassy wall using the light from the windows. Was fascinated by the shadows. He spent hours trying to make his clawed hands form the shapes of birds and dogs and rabbits. He never got it quite right, but he never stopped trying. "Why do human children play these games?" asked one night. "They teach nothing useful, no hunting, no fighting." "They teach other things," said. "Imagination, creativity, how to laugh." "Laughing is not useful." "Is it not?" smiled. "When humans are scared, we laugh to feel brave. When we are sad, we laugh to feel better. When we are alone, we remember laughter and feel less alone." Did not understand this, but she did not argue either. Began to tell them stories. Not stories about warriors or conquests, but stories about ordinary people who faced impossible situations and survived. A woman who walked across a frozen mountain to save her village. A man who sailed alone across a dark ocean. A child who protected her family from wolves with nothing but fire and courage. "These are not great warriors," said. "They are just people." "Yes," agreed. "Just people, that is the point." "I do not understand." "Someday you might." Ambassador noticed what was doing. He called her into his office one afternoon, his face tight with worry. "You are spending time with children," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir." "Stop." Blinked, "Sir. We cannot afford to offend them. If you do something wrong, if you say something that upsets them, the treaty negotiations will fail. Do you understand?" "I am only telling them stories, sir, playing games." "That is exactly the problem," leaned forward. "They are not human children, they are predators. Their parents see us as prey. If you confuse them, if you make them think of humans as equals, their families will be insulted." Said nothing. "Stay away from the cubs, that is an order." She nodded and left his office. That night she went to the garden anyway. The cubs were waiting for her. "You came," said. His tail wagged slightly before he caught himself and forced it still. Showing excitement was considered weakness among the. "I came," said. She sat on the grass with them and immediately demanded a new story. Told them about a grandmother who carried her grandson across a desert to find water. The grandmother was old and tired, but she did not stop. When she could no longer walk, she crawled. When she could no longer crawl, she pulled herself forward with her hands. She did not stop until her grandson was safe. "Why?" asked. Why did she not just leave him? He was slowing her down. "Because she loved him." "Love makes you weak." "Sometimes. But it also makes you keep going when you want to stop. It makes you stronger than you ever thought you could be." Was quiet. He was often quiet, letting the others speak while he listened. But that night, after the story, he moved closer to. "The bigger cubs hurt me," he said softly, "because I am small." Looked away, shifted uncomfortably. Put her hand gently on his arm. "I am sorry. My father says I must become stronger or I will never survive. He says weakness is death." "Your father is wrong." The words hung in the air. On questioning an adult was unthinkable, but said it calmly as if she was simply stating a fact. "Being small does not make you weak. Some of the strongest humans I know are small. Strength is not about size. It is about what you carry in here." She touched her chest over her heart. Stared at her with his pale eyes. No one had ever told him anything like this. 3 days later, found him in the garden bleeding. He was curled behind a bush trying to hide. His arm was slashed, his face bruised. He shook badly. Knelt beside him. "What happened?" "The older cubs," he whispered. "They said I was acting like prey, spending time with the human. They said they would teach me what happens to prey." felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. It was not fear. It was something else entirely. She picked up in her arms. He was heavier than he looked, but she did not care. She carried him out of the garden, through the streets, past dozens of adults who stopped and stared. A human carrying a cub like he was precious, like he mattered. She carried him all the way to the medical center and refused to leave until he was treated. By morning, everyone had heard. The summons came at dawn. A guard pounded on the embassy door with enough force to crack the wood. Ambassador was still in his sleeping clothes when he answered, his face pale with fear. The human female called, the guard growled. She will come to the Hall of Law now. Was already awake. She had not slept. She dressed in simple clothes and walked to the door where waited. What did you do? He hissed. I helped an injured child. You picked up a cub and carried him through the city like a pet. Do you have any idea what you have done? Looked at him calmly. I helped an injured child, she repeated. The Hall of Law was the largest building in the capital, a massive structure of black stone carved with images of ancient battles. Thousands had gathered to see what would happen. They filled the seats and lined the walls, their glowing eyes fixed on the small human who walked down the center aisle. Kept her head high, she did not look at the crowd. At the front of the hall sat the Council of Warlords, the leaders of the 5 greatest clans. Sat in the center, his face unreadable. To his left sat a younger warlord with cruel eyes and a face. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. He was young, perhaps 17 in human years, but already tall and muscled. His claws were fully grown, and he wore the marks of a trained warrior on his arms. I am, he announced to the hall, son of warlord. I bring accusation against the human. Watched him without expression. This creature, continued, pointing at her, has contaminated our cubs with weakness. She has touched them, spoken to them, filled their minds with prey thoughts. She has dishonored the children of. The crowd murmured angrily. I demand justice, said. I challenge her to answer for her crimes in the arena. The hall exploded with noise, shouted and stamped their feet. Some laughed, others snarled. A challenge to the arena was their oldest tradition, a sacred ritual of combat where disputes were settled with blood. But this, a human in the arena, it was absurd, it was laughable. It was legal. Ambassador pushed forward, his translator device clutched in his shaking hand. Wait, please, this is a misunderstanding. I meant no disrespect. She was only trying to help. She touched a child, said coldly. She carried him like cargo, she treated him like property. There is no misunderstanding. Raised his hand, and the hall fell silent. The law is clear, he said. His voice was heavy, tired. A challenge has been made. The human must accept, find a champion to fight in her place, or be declared without honor. His face went white. Without honor meant the entire human delegation would be expelled. The treaty would collapse. Everything they had worked for would be lost. I will find a champion, he said quickly. Give us time. One of your warriors surely would be willing to fight for prey, laughed. To risk death for a weak, soft creature who cannot even bare her own teeth. No warrior of would shame themselves so. He was right. Turned to the council, begging, pleading, but one by one the warlords shook their heads. Fighting for a human would be disgraceful. No one would do it. Then she has no champion, said with satisfaction. She is without honor. The treaty is void. The humans will leave our world in shame. Wait. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall. Everyone turned to look at her. I accept the challenge, she said. Silence, complete total silence. Then the laughter began. It started small from the back of the hall and spread like fire. Soon thousands were laughing, howling, crying with amusement. A human, fighting in the arena. A small, soft, clawless prey creature facing a trained warrior. It was the funniest thing they had ever heard. Smiled widely, showing all his teeth. The prey accepts, how brave, how foolish. Did not laugh, he studied with his ancient eyes. You understand what this means, he said. The arena is to the death or submission. There is no mercy, no surrender. I understand. You will face a warrior trained since birth. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor. I understand. Leaned forward, why? Looked at him directly. Because was hurt, because no one protected him, because if I do not stand, then I am everything you think I am. Somewhere in the crowd, 3 small faces watched with wide, terrified eyes. Gripped hands so hard it hurt, could not look away. The duel will be tomorrow at sunset, announced. Prepare yourself, human, you will need every moment. That night sat alone in her room, had screamed at her for an hour before giving up. The other diplomats would not meet her eyes. She had doomed them all, they believed. She would die and the treaty would die with her. Perhaps they were right. A knock at her window made her turn. She opened it and found, and clinging to the wall outside. You cannot fight him, said as she climbed inside. Is cruel. He has killed before in training, he enjoyed it. I know. Then why, demanded. Why did you accept? You could have refused, you could have gone home. And leave you, shook her head, no. Stepped forward. In his small claws he held a blade, a tiny thing barely longer than's hand. It was a cub's first hunting knife, given to children when they turned 5. Take this, he said, his voice trembled. Please, you will need a weapon. Took the knife gently. She held it in her palm, feeling its weight. Thank you, this means more than you know. It is too small, said angrily. It will not help, nothing will help. Set the small knife on her table, next to a bag she had brought from Earth. She reached into the bag and pulled out a sheath of worn leather. I brought my own, she said. She drew the blade. It was not large or fancy. It was simple steel, the kind humans had made for thousands of years, a tool for survival passed down through generations. My grandmother gave this to me, said. She told me that our family has carried it for 200 years. It has protected us through wars, through famines, through disasters. It is not special. It is not magical. It is just steel and memory. She looked at the cubs. But it has never failed us. Stared at the blade. You planned this. You knew this might happen. I hoped it would not, but humans have learned to prepare for the worst, smiled sadly. We are very good at surviving things we should not survive. She knelt before the cubs and placed a hand on each of their shoulders. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to remember something. Strength is not about claws or fangs or size. It is about standing up when everyone tells you to stay down. It is about protecting the ones you love, even when you are afraid. Tears ran down's face. I do not want you to die. Neither do I, said, so I will try very hard not to. She held them close, these children of predators, and for a moment they were just children who were afraid of losing someone they loved. Now go, she said softly. Get some sleep. I will see you tomorrow. They left through the window one by one. Was last. She paused at the edge. Fight well, human, she said. Fight like you mean it. I will, promised. She sat alone with her grandmother's knife and waited for the sun to rise. The arena was the oldest structure on, built 10,000 years ago when the first warlords united the clans through blood and combat. It was carved from a single mountain of black stone, shaped into a massive bowl that could hold 50,000. Today, every seat was filled. They had come to watch the human die. Walked through the tunnel that led to the arena floor. The roar of the crowd grew louder with each step. She wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a loose shirt that would not restrict her movement. Her grandmother's knife hung at her belt. Nothing else, no armor, no shield, no helmet. Ambassador caught her arm before she reached the entrance. There is still time, he said. His voice was desperate. We can leave, take the shame, rebuild elsewhere. No. You will die. You are not a warrior. You are a translator and a nobody. This is not your fight. Looked at him with steady eyes. This is exactly my fight. She pulled her arm free and walked into the light. The arena floor was a circle of packed earth, stained dark with the blood of centuries. The crowd surrounded it on all sides, rising up into the sky like the walls of a pit. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the Council of Warlords, watched with unreadable eyes. Was already waiting in the center of the arena. He was magnificent and terrifying. His gray skin gleamed with oil. His muscles rippled as he moved. He carried 2 curved blades, one in each hand, and wore light armor that covered his chest and shoulders. He smiled when he saw, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The prey arrives," he announced to the crowd. "How kind of her to save me the trouble of hunting." The laughed, walked to the center of the arena and faced him. The top of her head barely reached his chest. Standing next to him, she looked like a child facing a monster. Near the front barrier, 3 small figures pressed against the railing, stood with her fists clenched, was crying, watched with wide, pale eyes. A horn sounded. The duel had begun. Moved immediately. He was fast, incredibly fast, crossing the distance between them in 2 heartbeats. His right blade swept towards neck. She was not there. Stepped to the side at the last moment, her body turning just enough to let the blade pass. She did not try to block. She did not try to counter. She simply moved. Spun and attacked again, and again. Each strike was powerful enough to cut through bone. Each strike hit nothing but air. The crowd went quiet. Was breathing harder now. His attacks were fast but was always just out of reach. She did not run. She did not hide. She moved with small, precise steps, reading his body, predicting where his blades would go before he even knew himself. "Stand still," snarled. "Fight me." "I am fighting," said. Her voice was calm. "You just cannot see it." He roared and lunged at her with both blades, ducked under his arms and drove her elbow into his ribs. It was a small hit, barely enough to bruise, but it made him stumble. The crowd gasped. Humans could not fight, everyone knew this. Humans were weak, soft, slow. They ran from predators. They hid behind walls and machines. But this human was not running. Attacked again, more carefully now. He feinted left and struck right. Blocked his blade with her forearm, the knife spinning in her grip to catch his wrist. Blood flew, red against gray. First blood to the human. Looked at his wounded wrist with disbelief. Then his face twisted with rage. "Lucky," he spat. "You are lucky, nothing more." He attacked with everything he had. Both blades became a storm of steel, striking from every angle. He was done playing. He wanted her dead. "Stop dodging." She let his blade catch her shoulder. She let his claws rake across her back. She took the pain and kept moving, kept fighting, kept staying on her feet. Blood soaked her shirt, dripped down her arms, splattered the arena floor. But she did not fall. 5 minutes passed, 10, 15. Was panting now. Sweat ran down his face. His arms trembled with exhaustion. He had never fought this long before. His training had always ended quickly, with his opponent dead or broken on the ground. This small creature would not break. "What are you?" he demanded. Stood before him, covered in blood and wounds, her knife steady in her hand. She should have been dead 10 times over. She should have collapsed from pain, from blood loss, from sheer terror. She was smiling. "I am human," she said, "and you have made a mistake." "What mistake?" "You thought this would be quick. You trained for power, for speed, for the killing blow." She stepped toward him and he stepped back. "But my people did not survive by being strong. We survived by refusing to die. We survived by keeping going when our bodies screamed at us to stop. We survived by being too stubborn to give up." She raised her knife. "You are tired. I can see it in your arms, in your legs, in your breathing. You have never fought someone who kept standing up. You have never faced someone who was willing to bleed. Attacked one more time, a desperate overhead strike with both blades. Did not dodge. She stepped into the attack inside his reach, too close for his swords to hit. Her hand caught his wrist and twisted. Her knife found his throat. They stood frozen, her blade pressed against his scales. "Your people measure strength by the kill," said softly. "My people measure it by what we protect." She could have killed him. The angle was perfect. One push and his blood would paint the arena floor. She stepped back and lowered her knife. "I will not take your life," she said. "You are young, you can learn, you can become something better than this." Stared at her, his hands shook, his blades hung at his sides. "Do you yield?" asked. The arena was silent. 50,000 held their breath. Fell to his knees. "I yield," he whispered. The silence stretched on, endless and deep. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice began to chant. It was joined by another, then 1,000 more. They were chanting her name. She did not hear them. She was looking at the barrier, at 3 small faces staring at her with wonder and tears. She smiled at them. Then she collapsed. Was the first to reach her, ducking under the barrier and running across the arena floor. He skidded to his knees beside her, his small hands pressing against her wounds. "No," he said. "No, no, no, you cannot die, you promised." His eyes fluttered open. She was weak, so weak, but she found the strength to touch his face. "I am not dying," she whispered. "I am just very tired." And reached them, crying, shouting for medical help. The healers came running, their training kicking in despite their shock. As they lifted onto a stretcher, Warlord appeared at the edge of the arena floor. He looked down at the small human who had defeated his traditions and survived his arena. "What are you?" he asked quietly, the same question his warrior had asked. Met his eyes. "I am a friend," she said, "if you will have me." They carried her away, and the crowd kept chanting her name long into the night. Woke in a bed that was not her own. The ceiling above her was high and carved with symbols she did not recognize. The sheets beneath her were soft, finer than anything in the human embassy. Machines beeped softly nearby, monitoring her heart, her blood, her breathing. She tried to sit up, and pain shot through her entire body. She gasped and fell back against the pillows. "Do not move." Warlord sat in a chair beside her bed. He looked old in a way she had not noticed before, the lines on his face deeper, his glowing eyes tired. "Where am I?" asked. "My home. The healers said you needed better care than your embassy could provide. I ordered you brought here." Process this information. The warlord who had mocked her people, who had called them prey, had taken her into his own house. "Why?" Was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, his massive hands clasped before him. "I have ruled for 40 years," he said. "In that time, I have seen thousands of duels in the arena. I have watched the strongest warriors of my species fight and die and bleed." He paused. "I have never seen anything like what you did." Did not know what to say. "You could not win," continued. "That was clear from the start. You were smaller, weaker, slower. You had no training, no armor, no natural weapons. By every measure, you should have died in the first minute." "But I did not." "No, you did not," shook his head slowly. "You let him cut you, again and again. You took wounds that would have made a warrior fall, and you kept standing. You kept fighting. You waited until he was exhausted, until he could barely lift his arms, and then you struck." He looked at her with something new in his eyes, something that might have been respect. "My people have spent 10,000 years believing that strength means being the predator. The strong kill, the weak die. It is simple, it is clean, it is wrong." "Waited." "You showed us something different. Strength is not about the killing blow. It is about endurance. It is about sacrifice. It is about standing between the ones you love and the danger that threatens them." He stood and moved to the window, looking out over his city. My daughter has told me everything, the stories you told them, the games you played, the way you carried to the medical center when no one else would help him. He turned back to her. You treated our children with kindness when we gave you nothing but contempt. They are children, said simply. They deserved kindness. Yes, they did, and we failed to give it to them, returned to his chair. The treaty will be signed, that is certain, but more than that I want you to stay, as an ambassador, a true one, not a translator hiding in corners. Blinked me. You have done more for human relations in 2 weeks than decades of diplomacy. The people speak of nothing else. The human who would not fall. The prey who defeated a predator and showed him mercy. I did not defeat him. I just refused to lose. Is there a difference? Thought about this. Perhaps there was not. The door burst open, and 3 small figures rushed in and ran to her bedside, talking over each other, crying and laughing at the same time. You are awake. We were so scared. The healer said you lost too much blood. Father made them work all night. Gathered them into her arms, ignoring the pain. They pressed against her, warm and alive, their hearts beating fast. I am okay, she said. I promised, remember. Buried his face in her shoulder. I thought you were going to die. When you fell, I thought. He could not finish. I am still here. I am not going anywhere. Watched this scene with a strange expression. His daughter, the fierce, was crying against a human's chest. His people would have called it weakness once. Now he was not so sure. The boy, he said quietly. He has no family of standing. His father was a minor warrior who died in the border campaigns. His mother raises him alone. Looked up, what are you saying? In our culture, warriors can claim young ones as protected. It is an old tradition. The claimed cub receives the warrior's name, the warrior's protection, the warrior's honor. I am not a warrior. Smiled slightly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. After yesterday, no one would dare say that. Looked at his pale blue eyes and soft gray fur. He was small and afraid and had been hurt because he had dared to be her friend. Would you like that, she asked him, to be protected? His eyes went wide. You would claim me. If you want, if it would make you happy. He threw his arms around her neck and held on tight. It was answer enough. Over the following weeks, everything changed. The treaty was signed in a grand ceremony where stood beside ambassador. But everyone watched her, not him. She had become something new, something they had never seen before, a human they respected. Became an unofficial ambassador for the younger generation, telling other cubs about the human who fought like a mountain. She organized gatherings where human and children could meet, play games, share stories. Discovered that she loved human music and spent hours listening to songs from Earth. She learned to play guitar, her clawed fingers surprisingly gentle on the strings. Walked taller now. The cubs who had hurt him stayed far away. He was claimed by the human who had defeated a warrior in the arena. No one dared touch him. The warrior had beaten came to her one day. He stood in her doorway, uncertain, ashamed. I do not know why you spared me, he said. Because you can become better, replied. Because killing you would not have proven anything except that I could kill. I did not fight to destroy, I fought to protect. He was quiet for a long time. Then he bowed low and deep, the bow of a warrior to an equal. Teach me, he said, teach me to be better. And she did. Months passed, sent regular reports back to Earth, but she had no desire to return. This strange world with its amber skis and obsidian cities had become home. These predator people with their claws and glowing eyes had become family. One evening she sat in the garden where everything had begun. The purple plants swayed in the warm breeze. 2 moons hung in the sky. And sat around her. They were teaching her a game now, a complex thing with stones and strategy that she was losing badly. "You are terrible at this," said happily. "I am aware," laughed as she made another wrong move. "How can you be so bad at games when you beat in the arena?" "Different skills. I never said I was good at everything, just at not dying." Leaned against her side. He did this often now, seeking contact, seeking comfort. She put her arm around him. "Will you stay forever?" he asked. Looked up at the alien sky, at the stars that were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world she had left behind. Her family, her friends, her old life. But here was a new family. Here were children who needed her, and a people who were learning to see humans differently. Here was work that mattered. "Yes," she said, "I think I will." Made a sound of satisfaction. "Good, you still owe me a story." "What kind of story?" "The one about the grandmother in the desert. Tell it again." So told the story again, there in the garden under the twin moons. The cubs listened with wide eyes, even though they had heard it before, even though they knew how it ended. They listened because it was about love and sacrifice and refusing to give up. They listened because it was about what it meant to be human. And far above them, the stars watched, indifferent and eternal, as two species took the first small steps toward understanding each other. They had spent 10,000 years believing that strength meant being the predator. It took one small human girl to show them something different. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy was not the one with the sharpest claws or the strongest muscles. It was the one who would walk into an arena unarmed, surrounded by blades and enemies, and refuse to leave the ones she loved unprotected. That was human strength.